In this video, we're going to continue to work on queries from our PowerPoints that we've gone over in class. And we're in question 2, part 2A, query logic PowerPoint. As we talked about before, we've gone over these queries in class and the solutions are provided for you in your notes, but sometimes it's easier to learn if you're a hands-on visual learner by watching somebody do things or walking through them together. So because of restrictions about what we can and cannot record in your classroom and our inability to record the lecture, we've created this video library for you to help you with your studies. The first query we're going to do in this video is going to be to create an output that lists employee numbers, employee last name for employees who had sales in 2017 and a total of their sales discounts associated with those 2017 sales. So as we've talked about several times, it's not the preferred method to just jump into Access and start to drag and click and create these queries. We need to work through the logic before we even open Access in order to be able to use the tool effectively. So we need to come up with our select statement, our from statement, and our where statement before we ever open Access. In order to do that, I recommend that you look at this slide that contains all of our different tables. So as the query states, we're going to select employee ID, employee last name. We're going to create a field called employee sales for 2017, and then we're going to also calculate the discount. So we actually don't need the total sales for this one. We're just going to calculate the discount, but we have to know where the sales information is coming from because we have to get the tables or our from statement correct in order to be able to get this logic to work. So we know employee ID and employee last name live in the employees table. That one's pretty easy. And we know based on other queries that we've done and exploration that we've done in this database that the financial data for the sales lives in the sales lines table. So in order for us to get this discount, we've got to work with the sales lines tables. But we have a problem because the sales lines tables and the employee table, they don't connect to each other. They only connect through another table. So this is the first time that we've used a table in the middle to bridge the gap between two tables that we need in a query. It turns out, because we only need 2017 sales, that we actually need a field from the sales table. So it's not truly just a bridge between the two tables that we need, because we're going to use that in our where statement to limit our criteria. Our where statement will say where the ship date occurred in 2017. So we actually do need the ship date out of the sales table, so it's not truly just a bridge. But I wanted to point out to you that it very well could be just a bridge and we would have to need it to connect our tables together. So let's go to Access and create this query. We'll go to the Create tab in the query design. And then as we discussed, we will get the employees table, the sales lines table, and the sales table. And we'll close this. And then the first thing that we need to do, first thing that we always need to do, if we're sure these are the tables that we need to figure out a way to link these tables together. So we know that the employee ID is going to link to the sales table on employee ID, and these sales invoices are going to link themselves together. So now it doesn't really matter where your tables are. If it stresses you out, you can move them all around. Just remember, if you have to change the joins, they'll be based on where they were when you joined them. But that probably looks less intimidating, so we'll leave it like that with the employee, the sales, and the sales lines tables. So let's push this totals button to get our query started. And then as requested, we will put the employee ID, the employee last name. And then we need to calculate the total discount for sales for 2017. So the only way to be able to do this calculation is to know how the data is in the database. And hopefully, as you've been working with it, you figured out that the discount's in there as a percentage. And so in order to calculate the total discounts for each employee, we have to create this expression. So I'm going to use the builder. I could show you the syntax to type it down there if you prefer, and we'll do that in other videos. But for ease, right now we'll use the builder because that's what we use in class. So we're going to open this BA342 company and we're going to grab this table, and we need data out of the sales lines table. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the sales price and we're going to multiply it times the quantity sold, and then to get the total discount, we're simply going to multiply by the discount. Now, in previous queries, when we were looking for the net sales, we multiplied by 1 minus the discount, and you might remember. but that's going to give us the total of the sale with the discount subtracted out. This time, we truly do want just the total discount. So just straight multiplying these together will give us what we want. So we're going to rename this expression because we don't want our column to do that. We're going to call this total discount. And then I'm going to run it to show you what it does. So if I do this, I get this whole list of discounts based on employee. And there's several things wrong with this. One of them is that it's not in currency, and I can see that immediately. And I'm like, I need that to be in currency. So I'm going to show you how I would make this formula be in currency. In class, we've talked about several different ways that this could happen. You can go up to the property sheet, you can click on it, and you can make it currency. If you do that, all it does is change the way that you view it. It doesn't actually change the formula to currency. So I'll click back up on this builder, and in front of this colon, I'm going to type CCUR, which stands for coerce to currency. So it's going to take anything that I put inside these parentheses, and it's going to coerce it to be currency. So anything that this formula now calculates is going to come out as currency. So I click OK. I run it again and I get my currency, and I'm like, super. But then I have to remember, I actually want this to group by employee. And right now it's telling me it's grouping by employee ID, it's grouping by employee last name. Those are okay because those two things go together. They're linked together, so they're going to stay together. It's okay to group by them at the same time. But then I have this, and what I really need it to do is add up all of the discounts per employee. So I'll take this group by and I'll change it to sum. I could just as easily type sum up here, change that to expression, and that would be fine. But then I run it and I get more like what I'm expecting. I get my employees and I get my last name and I get the total discount that they have. We're only missing one thing now. Our query asked us only for 2017 sales. So in order to limit to only the 2017 sales, we have to limit the date. As we talked about in Module 1, the date that the sale occurs is the date of transfer of the goods. So the day that we deliver to our customer is actually the point of sale, is actually the sale date. So in this table, that's called ship date. That's the day that we actually deliver the goods. So we're going to bring ship date down here, and we're going to say I only want these sales that are in 2017. So the way that I do this is I'm going to do between 1/1/2017 and 12. I'm going to have to get my backslash or it's not going to work. 12/31/2017. When I click off of there, Access is going to put those hashtags around those dates for me because it knows that that's what I'm trying to get to. And I'm going to let it do that. Now, I don't need to show these dates. I just need them for criteria. And if I run this right now, it's going to go back to being all out of whack. And we had just created this nice, pretty sum, and then it freaks out on me and it doesn't do what I think it should do. So I have this ship date now that I've told Access, I want you to group by employee, sum this, and then group by ship date. Well, I don't really want it to group by ship date. I just want it to use my ship date for criteria. So we talked about earlier, my select from and where statement. This one becomes a where because it's only my criteria. I don't need it to show, so that's not a big deal. And I run it again, and I get the answer that I have been searching for with only the 2017 sales for the employees. So we'll close this one, and do we want to save it? Well, yes. Why would we do it if we didn't? And we'll do employee 2017 total discount. And then we'll save it. And that's how you would perform that one. So if you got lost a little bit, there's step-by-step instructions on how to do this in the slides, but I just wanted to walk you through it. And as you can see, that's the output that we've gotten. So let's try another one. What if we wanted to create an output that displays all employee last names followed by their first names and a count of their sales? Well, the keyword here is all employees. So in the last query that we did, and I'll go back up one so you can see the output, you'll notice we had 9 employees here. Well, if we look in the database, we truly have 10 employees. And so this one didn't give us all the employees. It only gave us the employees that had discounts or had sales. So this query wants us to do something a little different where we get all employees and then a count of their sales. So again, we would want to open this and try to figure out which tables that we need. So basically we need the employees table for the employee stuff, and we need a count of the sales invoices. So we can handle this. This isn't really that complicated of a query. It's just something different that we haven't had thrown at us yet. So let's create this new query with query design, and we'll get employees and we'll get sales. Maybe we'll get sales if I click on it. Okay. And so now we're going to join these together. This is the first thing that we do when we have multiple tables, employee ID to employee ID. That's lovely. But we said that we want all employees. So hopefully you remember back to when we talked about joins and the different kinds of joins. And this is how that we get all employees. So you can right click on or double click on this line and it brings up this join properties box. And what it says is right now it's an inner join. It says I only want to include rows where the fields equal each other. So where there's something in both tables, I want you to return that, which is how we ended up with 9 employees since we didn't have sales for the other one. Second option is I want you to include all records from employees and only those records from sales where the fields are joined. Well, that's what we want. We said all employees. This says all employees. Dead giveaway, right? This is the one we want. So we're going to select this type of join. After we select that type of join, we will then proceed with our query. So what we're going to do is we're going to have employee last name followed by first name, and a count of the sales. So this one is pretty simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to count the sales invoice ID. So all we're going to do is bring down sales invoice ID. And we're going to, oh, I forgot this totals thing again. Sorry, guys. There we go. So we're going to group by last name, group by first name. These are the same, so that's not going to be a big deal. And then we're going to change this to where it counts the number of sales invoice IDs. So when I run this, I get all of these employees, and you'll notice there's 10 of them, and Rolling Marie, sorry, can't read, says that she has 0 sales. So cool, that tells me that my join worked. But I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say count of employee sales. And then I'm going to put a colon and I'm going to create an alias for this so that in my output it just looks better. And so now you'll notice it says count of employee sales instead of that weird, I don't need a filter, thank you. Instead of that weird count of employee sales that it tried to create for me. So that's all that there is to that. That's just a different logic step with a count instead of a sum or instead of an expression. And so hopefully you understand that that's what would happen if we were trying to get this in this type of query. So again, if you have issues or you want to sort it, you can do that a couple ways. You can go back to this design view and you can sort it in ascending order. And that will sort it on the other end. Just so you guys know, you can also click here, and this is going to say, okay, you have an error, and you're going to say, I don't care. And then you can sort largest to smallest. Now, this isn't going to change the design view of your query, but it is going to change the front end. So you can click ascending, you can click descending, you can click all kinds of buttons, and that work the same way. But it's advisable to do it back here if you think of it on the front end. Okay, so we're going to save this one as count of employee sales. Close, save, yes. Count of employee sales. And we're going to work one more query in this video. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. And here you will find the answers to the ones that we just did. How to change the join, all that good stuff. There's the output. Okay, well, what about this one? What if we wanted to create a view or query or an output that displays the sales invoice ID and the count of how many different product lines were sold on each invoice? So if we need sales invoice ID and we need product ID, where are we going to get it from? Well, logically, you probably think we're going to get it from products because we need product ID. But really, if you look here, and you look at sales invoice, so we can look at sales because we need sales invoice ID and product ID. Well, they don't both live here. And so I can get products from this table and link it to the sales table and run through the sales lines table. Or I could get this one that has this lovely composite primary key right here of sales invoice ID and product ID. And then I just need the one sales lines table. This is why this is really important to be able to use that chart because the fewer tables that you can have in your query, the better it will run, the easier it will be. So we just need the sales lines table in order to be able to do that. And we just create the sales lines ID, and then we create this count of a product ID, and we let it group by sales lines, and then we run it and we get this, which shows us all of our sales invoice ID and the number of products that's on there. We're going to rename this number of products, give it an alias, which will be useful to us later. And so we'll run it again and make sure that it changed it to number of products, and it did. It's giving us exactly what we wanted. So hopefully that makes sense. But I want you to notice one more thing. When we run this, it shows us that we have 1,818 records, which if you open our sales table, should be the same number of sales that we have. So that's how we can double check our work and make sure that we have exactly what we think that we have. So hopefully that makes sense to you and you understand why we just have to have one table. So we'll close this and we'll save it as number of products per sale. Number of products per sale. So hopefully this gives you an insight into these three queries, and if you have more questions, please continue to watch our video series, and we hope to help you work through them.